The massive doors of the Galactic Council's archive chamber groaned open for the first time in centuries. Dust scattered in the artificial light as head archivist Reed walked inside, his aging fingers trembling with excitement. After 50 years of dedicated service, he had finally gained access to the most restricted section of the archives. The chamber stretched endlessly into the darkness, filled with data crystals containing the Council's deepest secrets. Reed's footsteps echoed against the metal floor as he approached Section 0, where the oldest and most dangerous records were kept. Security clearance confirmed. "Welcome, Head Archivist," the computer announced, its voice breaking the heavy silence. Reed inserted a crystal into the reader, and holographic images sprang to life around him. His eyes widened as he read the date stamp. 3,000 years ago. The exact day that changed the galaxy forever. The images showed a younger council chamber, packed with representatives from 100 alien races. They were arguing, their faces twisted with fear. In the center stood Council Leader White, his tentacles writhing with nervous energy as he addressed the emergency session. "The humans have gone too far." White's voice crackled through time. "Their quantum research will destroy the balance we've maintained for 10,000 years. They've already colonized 50 systems in just 2 centuries. Their growth is exponential." Reed watched as another counselor, a crystalline being, floated forward. "But genocide? We're talking about erasing an entire species and their homeworld from existence." "We've monitored their development," White continued. "Their AI research, their consciousness transfer experiments, their quantum tunneling technology. They're advancing too quickly. The simulations are clear. Within 500 years, they will dominate the galaxy. Everything we've built will crumble." The records showed the vote. 78 for, 22 against. Operation Timeline Purge was approved. Reed's hand shook as he accessed the next crystal. It contained technical specifications for a weapon that should have been impossible, a device capable of erasing not just matter, but time itself. The Council had spent a century developing it in secret, specifically to use against Earth. The footage that followed made Reed's stomach turn. The weapon's activation, the flash of impossible colors as Earth and all its colonies were supposedly erased from existence. The Council believed they had removed humanity from the timeline completely, like pulling out a thread from a tapestry and reweaving the whole. But something caught Reed's expert eye. A footnote, barely visible in the data stream. A small anomaly in the weapon's quantum field. A tiny fluctuation that the Council of that time had dismissed as insignificant. "Computer," Reed called out, his voice unusually strong. "Cross-reference this anomaly with all subsequent Council records." Working. Multiple references found. Displaying relevant data. More holograms appeared, showing reports from across 3 millennia. Unexplained energy signatures. Primitive colonies that somehow had earth plants and animals. Strange ships that appeared on sensors only to vanish completely. Reed's heart stopped as he realized the truth. The Council's greatest sin had also been their greatest mistake. The weapon hadn't erased humanity. It had only erased their ability to detect human quantum signatures. Like a blind spot in the galaxy's vision. As if confirming his darkest fears, the archive chamber's lights suddenly flickered. The computer terminal in front of him came alive with a message that made his blood freeze. "QUNTUM SIGNATUREDTCTE. Origin. Unknown. Type E. Human TTE Neurology. Statubius. Active. Throughout all Kewonseal space." "No," Reed whispered, understanding the full horror of what he had discovered. "They've been here all along. Watching. Waiting. And now." The lights went out completely, leaving him alone in the darkness with the weight of a 3,000-year-old sin. Somewhere in that darkness, humanity was finally ready to step back into the light. And the galaxy would never be the same again. Deep in the shadows of the Perseus Arm, far beyond the Council's sensors, a massive station hung silently in space. To any passing ship, it would appear as nothing more than an irregular asteroid, its surface dark and lifeless. But inside, humanity thrived. Commander Jack looked out through the quantum-shielded viewport at the endless sea of stars. Unlike his ancestors, he had never seen Earth, never walked under its blue sky or felt its warm sun. But every child in Haven Station learned about their lost homeland from the moment they could speak. Status report. He called out to the control room crew. The massive chamber hummed with activity, its walls covered in displays showing their hidden fleets and colonies spread throughout the galaxy. "All systems normal, sir," Officer Tom replied from his station. "Our quantum shields are maintaining full coverage across all settlements. The Council's patrol fleet just passed through Sector 7, completely blind to our presence." Jack nodded, remembering the stories his grandmother had told him. How their ancestors, a small group of research colonies, had survived the Council's attack only because they were testing experimental quantum shielding technology. The same technology that had hidden them for 3,000 years. "And Project Ghost?" he asked, turning to the science station where Dr. Anna worked surrounded by holographic displays. "Ready for final phase, sir." She pulled up a detailed projection of Council space. "Our ships are in position. 3,000 years of careful placement, each vessel hidden in plain sight. The Council never realized that their sensor-dead zones were actually our bases and ships, waiting." Jack walked to the central platform where a piece of their most precious cargo sat under heavy security, a fragment of Earth's soil preserved through the generations. Their ancestors had been testing the quantum shields on samples from Earth when the Council struck. While they couldn't save their homeworld, these few grams of soil had provided the genetic template for rebuilding Earth's biosphere in their hidden colonies. "Show me the latest simulation," he ordered. The air filled with light as their plan displayed in perfect detail. Unlike the Council, who had chosen quick destruction, humanity had spent 3 millennia preparing something far more elegant. Their revenge would not be swift. It would be perfect. "Fleet positions confirmed," Tom reported. "The Ghost network is ready. One command will reveal our ships in every Council system simultaneously. Their weapons will be useless against our quantum-shifted hulls." "And the time dilation fields?" Jack asked, turning to Anna. "Calibrated and ready. Each Council world will experience time differently, just as they forced us to experience 3,000 years of exile. Some will live centuries in days, others will freeze in moments that last years, all while watching their mighty Council crumble." Jack touched the small screen on his wrist, bringing up an image that made his heart ache. Earth as it had looked 3,000 years ago. Their long-range quantum sensors had finally managed to pierce the time void left by the Council's weapon. The image was old, showing Earth just moments before its destruction. "Begin final preparations," he ordered. "Notify all colonies and ships. In 24 hours, we reveal ourselves to the Council." The crew worked with practiced efficiency, each person knowing their role in humanity's carefully orchestrated return. They had survived, hidden in quantum blind spots that their own technology had created. They had advanced, developing weapons and defenses that the Council couldn't even comprehend. Most importantly, they had learned patience. As Jack watched his people work, he thought about Head Archivist Reed, who by now would have discovered the first hints of humanity's survival. The Council's own records would be their first warning, a fitting start to humanity's return. 3,000 years, Jack whispered to himself, touching the container of Earth's soil. The Council thought they were protecting the galaxy from us. Instead, they gave us all the time we needed to become what they feared most. The stars continued their eternal dance outside Haven Station, unaware that tomorrow, everything would change. Humanity was ready to step out of the shadows, and this time, they would not be denied their place in the galaxy. Council Inspector Marcus hated primitive world surveys. After 20 years of service, he'd seen enough mud huts and stone tools to last several lifetimes. This latest assignment seemed equally boring. A small colony world on the outer rim, supposedly home to simple farmers. His survey ship entered orbit around the peaceful-looking green planet, Standard scans showed exactly what the database claimed: scattered settlements, basic power signatures, and primitive communication signals. Everything matched the developing civilization classification perfectly. Too perfectly. "Run the scans again," Marcus ordered his crew. Something felt wrong. In 2 decades of inspections, he'd never seen readings quite so precise. "Sir," his sensor officer called out, "I'm getting some strange readings from the northern continent. The energy patterns, they're shifting." Marcus walked to the sensor station, his antennae twitching with curiosity. The readings didn't make sense. It was as if the entire continent was changing its energy signature, like a chameleon changing colors. Suddenly, every alarm on the bridge screamed to life. The primitive settlement below transformed before their eyes. Massive cities phased into existence, their quantum-shifted buildings becoming visible for the first time in millennia. Advanced energy signatures erupted from what moments ago had been empty fields. "By the Council," Marcus whispered. "What are we looking at?" His answer came as a massive ship simply appeared beside them, dwarfing their survey vessel. Its hull seemed to bend light itself, showing technology far beyond anything the Council possessed. "Attention Council vessel," a calm voice transmitted on all frequencies. "This is Commander Jack of Haven Fleet. Welcome to New Earth." Marcus felt his heart stop. New Earth. It was impossible. Humanity had been erased from existence 3,000 years ago. Every child in Council space learned about the Great Punishment, the ultimate example of what happened to races that grew too powerful too quickly. This is Inspector Marcus of the Galactic Council," he managed to reply. "You claim to be human. That's impossible." Earth was attacked by the Council using a quantum erasure weapon. Jack's voice held a hint of amusement. "Yes, we know. We were there. Or rather, our ancestors were. Welcome to one of many human worlds that have existed right under your noses for 3 millennia. The massive ship's hull rippled, sections becoming transparent to reveal vast cities within. Millions of humans went about their lives in what appeared to be a self-contained world. "But our scans," Marcus stammered. "All these years." "Your scans showed exactly what we wanted them to show," Jack explained. "Just like they do on 1,000 other worlds you've labeled as primitive or uninhabited. Humanity didn't just survive, Inspector. We thrived. And we watched. We watched as the Council congratulated itself for maintaining peace through our destruction." More ships appeared, each bigger than the last. Marcus's sensor officer fainted as the readings overwhelmed his equipment. The supposed primitive world below now pulsed with power that made the Council's most advanced cities look like those mud huts Marcus so despised. "Why now?" Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why reveal yourselves after all this time?" "Because the time has come for the Council to face its sins," Jack replied. "Your head archivist has already discovered the truth in your own records. Soon, every Council world will learn what their ancestors did. And then we will show them true justice." The human ships moved with impossible grace, surrounding Marcus's vessel in a complex dance that spoke of technology centuries beyond the Council's understanding. "You have 2 choices, Inspector," Jack continued. "Stay and witness what comes next, or leave now and warn your Council. Though I suspect you'll find they already know we're coming. After all, we've been waiting 3,000 years for this moment. We made sure they'd find those records exactly when we wanted them to." Marcus looked at his trembling crew, then at the display showing the massive human fleet. He realized, with growing horror, that humanity hadn't just survived the Council's punishment. They had turned it into their greatest advantage. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. 3,000 representatives from across the galaxy sat in stunned silence as a single human walked to the center platform. Admiral Stone, as he had introduced himself, wore a simple black uniform with no medals or markings. He didn't need them. The power radiating from his quantum-shifted armor made decorations unnecessary. High Counselor Gray, descendant of the leaders who had ordered Earth's destruction, gripped his podium with all four hands. You dare to enter this sacred chamber, to threaten the peace we have maintained for millennia. Stone's laugh echoed through the vast room. Peace? Is that what you call it? Erasing an entire civilization because you feared their potential. He pulled out a small device, and suddenly the chamber was filled with holographic images of Earth's final moments. We found these in your own archives. Stone continued. Your ancestors were thorough in documenting their crime. They watched as billions died, as a world was erased from time itself. And then they celebrated their victory. Our ancestors did what was necessary. Someone shouted from the upper tiers. Humanity was expanding too fast, developing technologies too dangerous. Stone pressed another button. New holograms appeared, showing the vast human fleet that now surrounded every council world. Ships that had been hiding for centuries, waiting for this moment. Look closely, Stone said softly. Those dangerous technologies you feared. We developed them anyway, but instead of taking revenge immediately, we waited. We watched. We gave you 3,000 years to change, to become better than your ancestors. And what did you do? He gestured at the council members. You kept the same system, the same fears, the same willingness to destroy anyone who might threaten your power. Well, now you face a choice. The chamber's main screen activated, showing a list of names. These are the descendants of those who voted to destroy Earth. Many of them sit among you today, enjoying wealth and power inherited from their ancestors' crimes. Surrender them to us for trial. Trial. High Counselor Gray scoffed. Under what authority? Under the authority of the 10 billion humans your ancestors murdered, Stone replied calmly. Under the authority of the countless colonial children who grew up never seeing Earth's sun. Under the authority of justice itself. He walked slowly around the central platform, making eye contact with various council members. You have 24 hours to comply. Surrender those responsible, acknowledge your ancestors' crimes, and agree to a new system of genuine cooperation between all species. And if we refuse? Gray asked. Stone smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Then we show you exactly why your ancestors feared us so much. But unlike them, we won't erase you from existence. We'll do something far worse. We'll make you live with the consequences of your choice. The device in his hand projected one final image. A temporal map showing distortions around every council world. We've spent 3,000 years placing time dilation devices throughout your space. Refuse our terms, and each of your worlds will experience time differently. Some will live centuries while their neighbors experience mere days. You'll watch helplessly as your mighty council fragments across time itself. Stone turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and don't bother trying to evacuate or attack the devices. They've been quantum shifted into spaces your ships can't reach, just like we were for 3,000 years. As he walked toward the chamber's exit, Stone's final words rang through the silent room. You have 24 hours to decide. Will you face justice willingly, or will you face the full technological might of the civilization you failed to destroy? Choose wisely. Unlike your ancestors, we're giving you a choice. The council erupted into chaos as Stone disappeared, literally disappeared, from the chamber. On screens throughout the room, the countdown began. 24 hours to face the consequences of a 3,000-year-old crime. And humanity was done waiting. The 24 hours had passed. In the Council's military command center, Admiral Roy of the Council Defense Force watched his display with growing horror. What had started as a few strange sensor readings had become his worst nightmare. Another fleet just appeared in the Centauri sector, his officer reported, voice shaking. They're everywhere, sir, simply appearing out of nowhere. Roy stared at the tactical display as more and more red dots appeared. Human ships were materializing throughout Council space, but not through jump points or warp gates. They were already there, simply becoming visible after hiding for centuries. Launch the defense fleet, he ordered. All ships, full attack formation. The Council's mighty armada, 10,000 ships strong, moved to engage the human vessels. Roy allowed himself a small smile. No matter how advanced, no enemy could withstand the combined firepower of the Council fleet. His smile vanished as the first shots passed straight through the human ships. Direct hits reported, his weapons officer called out. But no damage. The energy weapons are passing through them like they're not even there. On the main screen, Roy watched in disbelief as a human battleship simply phased through one of his cruisers. The Council ship's weapons fired continuously, but hit nothing. It was like fighting ghosts. "This is Commander Jack of the Haven Fleet," a calm voice transmitted across all frequencies. "Your weapons cannot harm us. We exist slightly out of phase with normal spacetime, a trick we learned while hiding from your quantum erasure weapon." Roy slammed his fist on the console. "All ships, switch to physical ammunition. They can't be ghost-like against solid matter." The Council fleet launched a barrage of missiles and kinetic rounds. The human ships didn't even try to dodge. The projectiles passed through them, just like the energy weapons had. "An admirable attempt," Commander Jack's voice held a note of amusement. "But we've had 3,000 years to perfect this technology. Now, let us show you what our weapons can do." The human ships began to pulse with strange energy. Wherever the pulses touched Council ships, sections of hull simply vanished, carved away with surgical precision. No explosions, no debris, just clean, precise removal of whatever they targeted. "We call it quantum cutting," Jack explained. "We can remove any matter we choose from normal spacetime, just like your ancestors tried to do to Earth." Roy watched helplessly as his fleet was systematically disabled. The human ships weren't destroying Council vessels. They were carefully removing engines, weapons, and control systems, leaving the crew sections untouched. "Sir," his communications officer shouted, "we're getting reports from every sector. The humans, they've been here all along. Those sensor dead zones we could never fix. Their ships were hiding in them. Every faulty sensor reading for the past centuries was actually a cloaked human vessel." On his screen, Roy saw it happening everywhere. Human ships appearing in places that had always been marked as navigation hazards or sensor anomalies on Council maps. They had built their entire ghost fleet in plain sight, taking advantage of the Council's assumption that such readings were just natural phenomena. "All Council ships, stand down," Roy finally ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. "We cannot fight an enemy we cannot hit." "A wise decision," Jack replied. "Now watch carefully. This is how your mighty Council ends, not with a bang, but with the quiet revelation that you never had as much power as you thought." The Ghost Fleet moved with perfect coordination, surrounding every major Council world. 3,000 years of planning was finally paying off. Humanity hadn't just survived. They had turned their greatest weakness into their greatest strength. They had become the ghosts that haunted the Council's blind spots, and now those ghosts were ready to collect their due. High Counselor Gray stood at his office window, watching the Ghost Fleet hover over the Council capital. 3 days had passed since their ultimatum. 3 days since the Council, in their pride, had refused to surrender those responsible for Earth's destruction. "Sir," his assistant rushed in, panic clear in all 3 eyes. "Something's happening. The human ships. They're activating something." Gray felt it before he saw it. A strange ripple in the air, like reality itself was bending. The Ghost Fleet's ships began to pulse with a deep blue light that spread across the sky. "This is Admiral Stone to all Council worlds." The transmission cut through every channel. "You chose pride over justice. Now you will experience time as we did. Cut off, isolated, watching helplessly as the galaxy moves on without you." The blue light intensified. Gray ran to his quantum communications terminal, trying to contact other Council worlds. The screen showed something impossible, time signatures that didn't match. "What you're noticing," Stone's voice continued, "is our temporal isolation field. Each council world will now experience time at a different rate. Some will live years while others experience mere days. Just as we lived 3,000 years in exile, you will learn what it means to be disconnected from the galaxy you claim to protect. Outside, Gray watched in horror as the sky seemed to crystallize. Through the temporal barrier, he could see other worlds in the council system experiencing time at different speeds. On one planet, trees grew and died in minutes. On another, clouds hung motionless in an almost frozen sky. "Council command, report," Gray shouted into his communicator. The response chilled him to his core. "Sir, Central Command is experiencing time at 1/10 normal speed. The colony worlds are at various rates, some faster, some slower. The human ships, they're the only things moving normally through all time zones." Reports flooded in from across council space. On some worlds, people watched their neighbors age years and days. Parents on fast-time worlds lived entire lifetimes while their children on slow-time worlds barely age. The Council's carefully organized society began to fracture as different worlds experienced different futures. "We found a fitting punishment." Stone's voice held no joy, only grim determination. "You can watch each other through the temporal barriers, but never interact. Each world will develop in isolation, experiencing time as we decide. Your mighty council will fragment not through violence, but through the natural drift of separated timelines." Gray slumped in his chair as the implications hit him. Trade routes would become impossible when buyers and sellers experienced time differently. Military coordination would fail when fleets aged centuries while their bases experienced mere weeks. The Council's power had always depended on unity, and now that unity was being torn apart by time itself. "The time dilation fields will remain," Stone continued, "until every council world acknowledges the crimes of the past and agrees to our terms. Some of you will make this decision after centuries of isolation. Others will watch those centuries pass in days. The choice of how long this lasts is yours." Through his window, Gray watched a neighboring world experience a year in minutes, its seasons flashing by like a speeded-up recording. His own world felt normal, but he knew from the reports that to outsiders, they were moving incredibly slowly. "This is the price of your pride," Stone's final message echoed. "You tried to erase us from time itself. Instead, we learned to master it. Remember this lesson well. It will be a very long time for some of you before you see normal time again." The Ghost Fleet remained in position, their crews immune to the temporal effects, thanks to their quantum-shifted state. They would watch and wait as the Council worlds experienced their isolation, each at their own pace, until they finally learned the lesson humanity had waited 3,000 years to teach. One by one, the temporal barriers fell. Some Council worlds had experienced decades within them, others mere months, but all had learned the same lesson. Isolation was a punishment worse than death. Commander Jack stood in the newly constructed Hall of Remembrance, built in the exact coordinates where Earth once existed. The massive space station served as both memorial and seat of the new galactic government. Through its quantum-shifted windows, visitors could see echoes of Earth's final moments, preserved in time like insects in amber. "The last Council world has surrendered," Admiral Stone reported, walking up beside him. "High Counselor Gray's planet experienced 15 years in what was 2 weeks for us." He aged quite a bit. Jack nodded, watching as representatives from across the galaxy filed into the great chamber below. Former Council races now sat beside species they had once deemed too primitive to join their alliance. The quantum technology that humanity had perfected was being shared, under careful supervision. "Bring them in," Jack ordered. The doors opened, and the former council leaders were led in. Many had aged decades in the temporal fields, their once proud forms now bent with the weight of years and guilt. High Counselor Gray's hair had turned completely white, his eyes holding the wisdom that only true isolation could teach. "Welcome to Earth's coordinates," Jack addressed them. For 3,000 years, this space was empty, a void in the galaxy where a civilization once flourished. Today, we begin to fill that void, not with revenge, but with understanding. He activated the station's main display, showing the new charter that would govern galactic civilization. You've all agreed to our terms. The old council is disbanded. In its place, we establish the Galactic Cooperative, where all species have equal voice, and no race may be erased for advancing too quickly. And our punishment? Gray asked, his voice trembling with age. Will we remain trapped in different time streams forever? No, Jack replied. Your temporal isolation ends today. But this station, and the time-locked image of Earth's destruction that surrounds it, will remain as eternal testimony. Every representative who serves here will work in view of what fear and pride can destroy. Stone stepped forward, addressing the assembled species. Humanity could have chosen destruction as revenge. Instead, we choose reconstruction. Our technology will be shared. Our knowledge will be taught. But certain advances, like the quantum erasure weapon, will be forever banned. The former council leaders were led to their new seats, no longer elevated above the others, but equal among the stars. Their descendants would serve, but never rule. It was part of the agreement they had signed after experiencing years of temporal isolation. 3,000 years ago, Jack continued, your ancestors feared that humanity would dominate the galaxy within 500 years. They were wrong. We didn't want domination. We wanted cooperation. And now, after 3 millennia of watching from the shadows, we understand how to achieve it. He gestured to the quantum-shifted windows, where Earth's final moments played on eternal loop. This is our past, preserved but not defining us. And this, he swept his hand across the gathered representatives, is our future. Not a council that rules through fear, but a cooperative that grows through understanding. As the new charter was signed, Jack thought about the generations of humans who had lived and died in hiding, preparing for this moment. They had turned their punishment into preparation, their isolation into strength. Now, they would turn an act of destruction into an opportunity for rebirth. The galaxy would remember Earth, not as a civilization erased by fear, but as the catalyst for a new age of cooperation. Humanity had survived, evolved, and finally achieved something greater than revenge. They had created justice.